Hey, what's going on? So, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about why I'm starting this channel and what is this going to be about, right? Um I've been thinking about, starting a YouTube channel for quite a while, and this is the first video among many that I plan on making. Um and basically the reason why I'm making this channel is because I sense that there's um real problems happening in society right now as far as um the future of men, you know of society. And it really scares me, really, really, really. um and maybe I'm just somebody who's lived some difficult um experiences in life. I know that to be true. But what I also know is there are countless millions of other people, other men who have lived um, and are living the same thing that I'm living and trying to get through it, right? And it's a huge challenge today. Um, Life isn't easy, and if you're a man, it's gonna be really, really hard, especially in today's society, with feminism and wokeness and just birth control. And if you know the manosphere at all, and you're you know you understand the real actual position men are in right now, you should be um very, very aware of what's going on. People like 50 Cent and celebrities and whatnot, you know they're not even getting in real relationships right now, just because it's such a catastrophe. It's such a minefield. Like, women today, they're generally just looking for a provider, for somebody to make their life better without any of the sacrifices that come with that. And there's just a huge lack of respect. And it seems like, as a man, that it's a lose-lose situation. If you're nice, then women just don't like you because you're weak, and you're always giving them what they want, and they end up you know despising you because you're a simp. And if you're assertive, and you demand respect, then you're a toxic male, right? And there's no in between. It seems to be you're on one extreme or the other. And that's the situation that we're in, 2025. I'm largely making this channel for several reasons. Is because, first of all, I think there's a huge problem in society, and I think that there needs to be more people talking about this. I think a lot of men are just suffering in silence, and the majority of society is in that situation as far as men. you know the men who are in a relationship, I think most of them are unhappy. And the ones who aren't, they're also struggling to understand how to live, when you don't have that typical life partner that our parents and our grandparents you know seem it was like an automatic thing for them. Like, in the past, it was, you get a college degree, you get married, and you have some level of stability in life. Today, 2025, I got my degree. I believe that lie that get your degree, you'll be doing all right. Get married, and you'll do great. And I provided everything for the mother of my children until she was rich and she had built up her business. I even moved to a country where I didn't speak the language for, and I just basically I was totally that self-sacrifice type of guy. And what ended up happening was she built her life up to a level where there was no respect for me anymore, and she couldn't see how I was contributing because she was the main breadwinner at that point. So ended up getting divorced, and it was just a huge for lack of a better word, like a shit show, right? I mean, it was just she took the cat, she took the cars, she took the kids, she took the house, she took everything. And I really ended up with nothing after years of commitment and building together. She took everything that we had built, and I ended up getting nothing out of it after all that work, years, like a decade of being together and married, and that was the result. And then I found myself alone, and you know, with no real assets. Um, and then I got in another relationship. Didn't get married this time, and but I'm going through the same stages. It's the same thing, you know. Only I'm not giving so much everything, and I'm being a little bit more considerate about what am I actually going to get out of this in the long run, because the family courts are set up where if you separate, the women, they get the kids and they get more than their share of whatever they put in the relationship financially, and usually almost everything. um Even if, like my case was, even if you don't even if you're poor, you end up paying whatever like cents or dollars you have to the like it's really amazing. The court systems are just completely behind the women today. And unless you have, unless you're a multimillionaire and you can provide a really good lawyer who can actually navigate the minefield that the family law has established itself, then you're screwed as a man. And that's just the reality, and that's where we are. So I really believe that we're in a decline. Women will take everything that you built together and leave, and they have no problem doing that. There's not going to be any remorse or guilt on their part. Everything is just like a selfish move forward, and be proud of yourself for that. And that's more like the system, that's more where we are today. Like it's not like an exception, like it's actually just the reality, right? And you know women are basically with you for what you can provide for them, right? So if you're not providing for them financially, maybe you're providing a reputation for them, or maybe you're famous, or you're rich, or just the status of them being with you helps feed their ego. But everything is like ego based as far as why they're in a relationship with you, right? And that's why people like 50 Cent, whatever, they're like, there's no real like positive thing that can come out of this, because ultimately the women are toxic, and it's just a question of how much you can bear, until she starts trying to take things that she never earned, and you end up with nothing, with no kids, with no cat, with no house, with you end up at the base. And what happens is when you go back to that, you have nothing. And so now you're maybe you're on the market looking for somebody else. But now you've set yourself back, because now you no longer have those assets. Maybe you're depressed, you don't see your kids anymore, you don't have your cat anymore. You've lost your house, or your finances are in a wreck, whatever that situation might be. That's where you're gonna find yourself in. So um women, they know that they can always find a simp, right? Like there's you know there's guys who can't even find girls, right? Like, so even like guys with money, there's some guys just don't have much game, they don't understand the psychology of women or whatever. And the thing is like these guys will always be available to women. So a woman, she knows that she can get rid of you and replace you really quickly, with somebody who's going to provide and protect, whether they respect that person or not. For them, they're just happy to be rid of you and find a quick replacement. And the grass looks greener for them. Women, they don't really think the long run that much. They're just kind of like looking out for themselves in the day to day. And my experience is women, they don't really calculate the negative things or the pain that they're causing their children, or they're causing the family, or they're causing you. There's not really like that. There's no real remorse, and there's no like there's no like real morality to it. Like they might lie and say they're religious or whatever, and maybe there are, some women, there are some exceptions, like maybe like 1 in 1,000 you might find that, gold nugget, but the chances of you finding that gold nugget are very low. It's more likely that you think you found that gold nugget, and then you find out who you are really dealing with. That is super common, much more likely to happen. So I don't believe in that gold nugget. As a man, you're just in a really bad position to, to try to make your life better by adding a woman to it, right? So just keep in mind, a woman is like more there, as a compliment, not even a compliment. That's like too positive, because usually they're not. A woman is more like another child, like the child, but like worse, like a child who's always going to talk back to you, a child that's not going to respect you, a child who thinks they're above you. And so somebody you have to take care of, but somebody, it's like, the nagging mom who is also dependent on you, who actually, who thinks that, they could be like overweight or whatever, they just think they're so sexy, just because there's like, men simps out there who are willing to like their posts, or they're just desperate to find a girl or whatever. There's always that, so they have this inflated sense of self-worth, and it really gets into their brain at a really deep level, and there's really not much you can do about it as a man. Um so and most of these women, they have high body counts, they've already, they've been with Chad and Brad, and they've been with, all those guys, and they've given themselves to those guys, and put up with everything, and then now, they're looking for that good guy to take care of them, right? So now, maybe they're getting a little bit older, they put on, 15, 20, 30, 40 pounds. Maybe they're starting, they're not really waking up, but they just have slightly less options than before. So now they're considering nice guys, whereas before, they kind of just wanted, the football captain, or the biker guy, or the gang, the gang member or whatever. They were looking more for that, that curb appeal, and that's who they're looking for. But now that, they're getting a little bit more desperate, now they're going back to that. So I mean, a woman, she's in her prime, like around when she's like 18, 19, 20, right? And then she's gonna go ahead and rack up the body count pretty much. I mean, there might be a few exceptions, but um also, the thing is, the woman will lie about that, so it's difficult to trust them anyways. But um they're just gonna rack up bad experiences, and their ego is gonna blow up, and when you're 18 years old, and you're at your highest worth, you think that you have this inherent value, right? You think that, like, that's who you are, like you internalize that kind of like as your child, right? And and then, like, you can gain, like, if you're a woman, you can gain 50 pounds, and maybe, maybe you haven't improved yourself, maybe you haven't gotten better, maybe you haven't tried to grow spiritually, maybe you haven't, had any introspection, and you just think that, you know until the day you die, you're, even if you're 90 years old and, 400 pounds, you still have this, I'm the queen, I'm the best, and, feminism rocks or whatever, screw guys, and you're just gonna disrespect, even like a guy who's trying to do the right thing by you. Like you're just at this point, there's like a point. It just seems like women are just incapable of respecting you, right? If you're hard about it and you just try to enforce respect, then you're just the mean guy, right? You're just like the terrible monster, and if you put up with it and you're just like a nice guy about it, then they just walk all over you and insult you, and things can get physically abusive. I've lived with that. Verbally abusive, I've seen that. and whatnot. And there's a point where, as a man, the thing is like, you might be able to put up with that for a minute, and then you're gonna get out of there, after a few years or whatever. But the thing is like, what I would really warn men for, this is my main experience, because I've been with a few women. I'm not gonna say you know I'm not like one of these alpha guys who's been with like how many all this experience and whatnot. I grew up in a pretty religious household, and so I guess you could say I was a little bit of a late bloomer, and so there's that. But the thing is like, um that's this is just like the you know typical thing, is that the problem, what I was trying to get at was, the problem is that, here's the thing is, children are going to be affected the most, right? And what men don't understand is, children throw a monkey wrench into everything. Because if you're with a toxic woman, I mean, it's rough to break up, and it's never fun, even if you're like in a toxic relationship. Sometimes it's hard to get out of those sometimes, to be honest, because maybe you've been with somebody for a while, and it's just not easy to pull the trigger sometimes. But when you have kids, you can't really pull the trigger when you want to. You want to get out of the relationship. You want to be with somebody else, but the thing is you can't, because you understand that if you leave the relationship, then you're not going to see your kids anymore, and your kids are going to go to the mother. And that's, for me, that was a huge problem in two of my long-term relationships. Was I had kids with each of these people, and I just had to put up with so much shit. Like, I had to, and I'm still putting up with it. I'm still um with the mother of my last two kids. I have three kids. And it's just constant disrespect, constant nagging, constant devaluation intentionally, constant mind games. Um and there are days when you just don't know how you put up with it. Now, I've mitigated that to a large extent. I have my own place, once again, and I'm able to distance myself physically and emotionally when things get heated up. So that's helped me. But I still find myself in a relationship that I don't want to be in, and I'm still in it. And why am I staying? I'm staying because you know I know that I won't be able to see my kids anymore. That if I get out of the relationship, that as far as family law is here in Europe, I'll end up seeing my kids every 2 weekends, Saturday and Sunday. So essentially, I'll be seeing my kids, you know, 4 days a month if I pull the trigger and break up with this person. So I really want to, to form a better relationship with somebody. I really do. I want to have a connection, but I can't like get out of the relationship because I understand that I won't see my kids anymore. And this happened to me in my first relationship, where I don't see my oldest son. My oldest son's he's 13. No, he's 12. He'll be 13 in a month or two. But I don't see him very often. I don't have the relationship that I would like to have with him. And now I understand that I'm at a risk for that to happen with my two other kids, which are now they're 3, almost 4, and 5, almost 6. So I find myself in that situation again, and this time around, I know that I know how the family law works, and how often I'll be seeing my kids if I break up and I pull the trigger and I get out of this relationship finally. Um, that I understand that I'll see my kids much less, and some other guy is gonna be coming around. What kind of father is he gonna be? What kind of situation is it gonna be for my kids and whatnot? So I mean, I just find myself kind of living in like this lambo land where I'm living like in a disrespectful relationship, where there's just no communication, and it's just like power games left and right, um and just being stuck in that, and there's not much I can do because I'm extremely screwed by staying in because I can't really be happy with it, and I'm extremely screwed by if I get out of the relationship because obviously I won't see my kids anymore. So I mean, I'll see them, very rarely. So I'm at the point where, I kind of just pretty much don't really care either way because it's just such a negative either way. Like, if I end up, staying with the mother for years on end, I know, the negativity that I'm going to be going through on a, daily, weekly, monthly basis for years to come. And I know if I end up getting out, then, I just won't be seeing my kids that much for much anymore. So, I mean, that's really where we are. It's a difficult situation, and a lot of these guys that I find speaking on YouTube and whatnot, a lot of them don't have kids, or they just don't really love their kids too much, and they're just kind of like Andrew Tate. I think he has like kids with multiple people, but I guess he's in a more of a financial secure situation where he can kind of, maybe he can negotiate financially and kind of see his kids when he wants and go out and see them more. Whereas I'm just kind of like the everyday type guy, working a normal job. I can't just pay the mom a couple $100 per day just to shut up so I can come by, see my kid, pick him up, and go eat ice cream, whatever. It's not that type of situation, and that's a situation where the majority of men are in. So I would just be really careful. Having kids is, if you have kids, just know that you're putting in today's society, to be realistic, just know that you're putting yourself in a really bad position, unless you're in that 1% of men who actually have kind of like a productive, good, positive relationship, which I think is pretty rare these days. I would say it's probably less than 1%, to be realistic. So I mean, if you're a man, and even if you're, let's say you're in, maybe you're younger, maybe you don't have these life experiences, I would say just be really careful, like getting engaged or getting married, and having kids, because uh, the like I really screwed myself getting having kids with these people. To be honest, my life would be so much better, so much more higher quality. I would have so much more control, and I would be able to just move anywhere, do anything, not have too many worries if I didn't have kids. But because I have kids, there's just so many personal sacrifices I've had to make the last decade or two, then the last 13 years, because of that. Um, where I wouldn't even be in this country if I didn't have kids. I would be out of here like in two snaps of a finger, the drop of a hat, I'd be out. Um so I'm kind of here on this channel just to kind of talk about these problems, and I'm going to be sharing some screen captures of um movies and men, like celebrities and common situations. I'll also be sharing other YouTube channels and commenting and doing some reaction videos on like the manosphere, on how can we deal with this type of situation. I'm at my wits end. I mean, I'm even trying to strategize things, and I'm doing like emotional things that aren't normal to myself to try to cope with the reality of having kids with questionable characters. Women understand that you love your kids, and they understand that that is um the main way that they can manipulate or they can get something out of you. And a lot of guys, their response to that is just to kind of say, you know what, forget the kid, and kind of just be irresponsible about it. My reaction is, I want to be a good father, even if I'm not there for my kids, and I want to have as maximum of an impact as I can, because let's face it, I'm responsible for creating them to some point. And I'm responsible also, when my kids grow up, I don't want them to grow up in the same society as I've had to grow up in, where I make all these sacrifices, getting a college degree, getting married, being committed, being loyal, and trying to be a good ethical person has done nothing but kind of dig me into a deeper hole. And that's a terrible place for society to be in. And that's a terrible place for our children to be in. And it just sets the tone, it just sets the stage for manipulation, for lies, for power plays, and for sick families, for a sick society, and for sick relationships between men and women, to be honest. And uh, we are already there. We're already past the point of no return. We can't go back and change the present situation, because we are already in a hugely compromised situation as men, just to be honest about it. Um, so I'm not exactly sure how we got here. I'm not exactly sure. Men are supposed to be the patriarchy, and we're supposed to be, toxic masculinity and stuff like that. And if that was the case, if we had this much control, how did we get in this situation, right? And that's why I'm really creating this channel, and that's why I'm serious about this topic. I wanted to create a YouTube channel, but I wanted it to be a YouTube channel where I could bare my soul, I could talk about it, and really make a difference, and make an impact, a positive impact somehow on society and on my family, and also to reflect on these things myself. So that's what this is all about. So it's a little bit of a long video. That's pretty much all I have to say. Stay tuned for more videos to come, and good luck on dealing with all those those issues, as far as if you have any experience as far as what I'm explaining. Like, I understand the suffering, I understand the mind games. It's a spiritual war, it's a psychological war, it's a mental war. And it shouldn't be a war. It should be, families are supposed to be supportive and even forgiving. I want a family that's full of love, communication, respect, forgiveness. These are the things that create a real place where you want to actually be in. Not a place. What are the opposites of forgiving? Vengeance seeking, non-communicative, abusive, selfish, dangerous places. That's the reality of families and most households today. And I kind of grew up in a house where it was secure in many ways, but it was also highly dysfunctional in that there was really no real communication. It was just kind of like, this is it, and we're not happy, and that's fine. It's halfway working, so let's put up with it. But I just don't feel happy living in that type of stagnant, like, lack of growth, where you know if you have a relationship between a man and a woman, or a mother and a father, or a husband and a wife, two spouses, you know how are you going to have a relationship if one of those people is against communicating, if one of those people is just is closed to communication? And that's the problem, is like, a lot of these relationships, we have one person who wants to communicate, one person who wants to get better, but one person just clearly doesn't give a flying what about communication. So I mean, it is what it is. And stay tuned, because it's going to be a long road, and we're going to do it together. So good luck to y'all.